Tune in to News Across the Galaxy, where they talk all things LA Galaxy with the Nag Boys. Let's start nagging.
Wait, so is the intro playing? Oh, we're on the stage. Dude, the intro played like 3-4 times. Which is welcome to News Across the Galaxy, where we talk all things LA Galaxy. I'm your host, Brian Lobos, and of course, with me, as usual, Mr. Edgar Zuniga. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey man, I'm doing great. It's late on Sunday, but I get a little bit excited because there was some excitement that went down at the dig last night, and we have a very special guest to shed some light on that and the excitement that's going on in Denver with the Leagues Cup. Please, a warm applause for our good buddy Matt Pollard. Thank you so much, Matt.
Guys, I'm so exhausted. I don't know what to. I don't know how to process what I have seen from this Colorado Rapids team. I knew they had something with Chris Armas. They've completely, whatever expectations were coming off of the team winning the Rocky Mountain Cup for the first time since COVID, to end MLS play, they've completely shattered that. It seems like anything is possible, and this team, there's not a team in this league that I think the Rapids wouldn't go into a game feeling confident about and thinking that they could get something from that game. And to think this is where we are when this time last year, Robin Fraser was getting fired. The president of the club was, having these cringy press conferences, and the supporters group was actively planning a boycott. I don't know how to explain or how to emotionally process what I've been watching.
Well, it's a beautiful thing to watch from an MLS perspective, to be honest. Not just that, what they've done in MLS play in general. They're fourth in the West. Big jump from where they were last season. And on top of that, in this Leagues Cup tournament, they eliminated all the Mexican teams that they were faced with. And that's kind of big when it comes to the Liga MX versus MLS talk. And you guys are in front of the charge. You guys are leading the way, teaching.
Yeah, I don't know.
MX.
I'm the gringo in this case. You guys tell me, do the Rapids, can we claim the 2024 Apertura? This is how this works, right?
Yeah.
If UCF football can go undefeated in 2017 with a cupcake schedule, play no Power 5 school, not play in a big bowl game, and claim a national championship, I feel like the Rapids should claim the 2024 Apertura at this point.
Well, like you mentioned, anything is possible.
It's funny. It reminds me of how just several weeks ago, I happened to jump on to the Leon Lions Den podcast, and that's our good buddies from Club Leon, right? Gotti and the guys there. And I remember they were talking about how they have a player named Cabral on the team. And they're like, oh, yeah, we expect Cabral to do this against Portland and that, and against Colorado. And I'm like, you guys do know that there is another Cabral. And they're like, who is this Cabral? I'm like, he plays for Colorado Rapids. And they're like, and I told him, you better fear that Cabral, because that Cabral, he's cold-blooded and he's gonna take you guys down. And they were like, what are you talking about? Who is this Cabral? And I was like, you will know his name.
Okay, that's a little bit too much lore. He has 4 goals. He's also hurt with an elbow injury and probably just coming back for the start of the playoffs. But prior to the injury, Kevin Cabral had a really good thing going, and fitting that his possibly the final action that he took as a Rapids player in the regular season was scoring against the LA Galaxy. Not that mattered, because squad rotation that night didn't particularly work. But I think, as we talked about this beforehand, Ed, last time that I was on the show, that sacrificing that game to then win on Saturday against the Rocky Mountain Cup was absolutely what was needed. So I guess Cabral's elbow died for our sins.
But the spirit of Cabral lives on and reverberated on Saturday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was Georgi Mihailovic's next Stefan, if you ask me. But
yeah. Edgar, I
Well,
know you
it
had
took down
some
the
things you
mighty
wanted to.
Eagles. It took down the mighty Águila of Club America, and I'm a Club America fan. And man, I love seeing Club America win in Liga MX, and I'll be the first one to start singing the anthem and everything. But when it comes to Liga MX versus MLS, there's especially with Club America, I get a little conflicted. But you know what? I live in the U.S. and the LA Galaxy is close to my heart, but so are all the other MLS teams. And I know there's other MLS fans that aren't the same way as I am, but I was there from the very beginning. So I always feel like a sense of ownership, a sense of investment in all the clubs, especially the legacy clubs like the Rapids. So seeing them take down Club America, it doesn't hurt so much because you see the joy and the Rapids players, and you know what it means to them. Club America is going to go back home to DF, and they're not going to feel too bad about this. They're going to be like, well, damn it, we lost to the Rapids. But in the end, it'll just be a footnote in their history. But what it means to the Colorado Rapids and to the supporters and to people like you, Matt, I'm sure it's a lot bigger, right?
I mean, shock. I mean, this was the first real test. I think part of I've been banging this drum for a while now. The Rapids, outside of a win at RSL the third week of the season, do not have a quality win on the road against quality opposition, and normally they haven't played as well on the road against good teams. We saw squad rotation against LA Galaxy didn't really work out, but they went into LAFC and got absolutely shellacked. My co-host on Holding the High Line, Rabbi Mark Goodman, we have a text chat during the game. And so for some of these tougher road games, particularly against quality playoff teams, we have had this like internal metronome for both of us of at what point in the first half does one of us message the other one saying it's a bad start? And then at what point does the other one respond by saying it's not a bad start, the opponent is just a better team? If you go back and you were to watch, say, the loss to at FC Cincinnati from earlier on in the season, it's about the opening 20 minutes before you're like, okay, Lucho's feeling it. The Rapids are taking on water. It's just a matter of when they concede the first goal. And so I went into this game really curious because the Rapids haven't played an MLS team since Portland Timbers. And Providence Park is a haunted place and it's horrible. And the Rapids should never go there again, as we saw in the opening week of MLS. But so to go into an atmosphere like that, where it was functionally a Club America home game in terms of what they had with the hub situation and going into the atmosphere, and to have a really good game plan that I think stymied America. And, they had, I think it was 20 shots and only 4 of them were on goal, and they didn't have anything on goal in the first half. A little beneficial that Brian Rodriguez wasn't really feeling it. This is a Galaxy podcast. I can say that. We can all cheer for that happening. But, I feel like they stood tall. They had a game plan that was somewhat differential, or at least acknowledged that Club America was the better team, but was not fearful of them. This wasn't a promoted team in the Premier League going first weekend of the season to at Manchester City and just coming out in a flat 4-4-2, waiting for Erling Haaland to score the first goal and for them to be beat. And in that regard, that for me is what's really changed about this, or where this has been a signal that maybe this Rapids team is using Leagues Cup to build on something that's going to be functional in the playoffs, where they can be deferential or they can acknowledge the qualities of the opposition without straight up playing small. They played small at LA Galaxy, albeit with a reduced lineup. They played small against LAFC. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. And we see them do that in some of those other big games. That's something I still have a concern. One of many things that Chris Armas continues to tinker with and improve and show that this team's capable of punching above their weight.
And to that, Edgar mentioned earlier about how maybe Club America is gonna just write it off and it's not. I was actually watching ESPN Deportes, and I wanted to hear the take from the Liga MX pundits. They are very mad. They are angry. They are disappointed. This is their 2-time champion coming into a League's Cup that does not matter, and are playing an opposition that is less than. And so they got showed up here in League's Cup and being one of the top teams in Mexico. Not only a top team, they're a legendary team. They're a team that has history from day one. And seeing that as an MLS fan, it makes my heart happy, to be honest. It makes my heart very happy.
For a tournament that supposedly is a cash grab, that Liga MX power brokers ultimately decided we want to play in the US because we'd rather make more money than actually have it be competitive. And for a competition that they claim they're not taking seriously, every single one of these fan bases seems super salty when they lose.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, it's funny because like you hear a lot of you've heard people from both sides, Liga MX and MLS, say, really don't care about this tournament, especially the Liga MX people, because they're like, this comes at a time when our season is just starting and we're trying to figure out what our teams are like and we're trying to get our footing. We really don't need this tournament right now. And then MLS people are like, damn it, we're trying to make sure our players stay healthy. Do we really want to put this much energy out there when we should be focusing on MLS Cup or other things? But then you have teams that go in there where like, we have nothing to lose. Let's go out there. Let's go, boys. Uh, and then the games don't matter until that whistle blows and you see the guys going at it and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it does matter. Nobody wants to lose these games. Yeah, they don't care about the tournament itself, but in the end they don't want to lose either.
I think
So
it's funny, Ed, how for 10 years we've been banging the drum of the fact that Liga MX starts a week early and the weather is bad in a lot of markets. Not LA. LA is a bad example for that. That puts MLS teams behind the 8 ball in CONCACAF Champions League or CONCA Champions Cup, and somehow Liga MX fans are so dismissive of that. But when the shoe is on the other foot, somehow it's a completely reasonable thing to bring up as well. So I was making a joke with my podcast co-host on the night of he was rehydrating after a very long night of celebrating the Rapids win, and he needed some extra water, and so he didn't need to go to the faucet because he was drinking the tears of the of Club America fans. And I went rafting earlier this week actually, and it turns out the Colorado River here in Colorado was at a 7-year high for where it's been previously, and apparently that was all the tears from the Toluca and the Juarez fans. So the Colorado
Damn.
Rapids are solving literal droughts out here in the Western United States.
Talk that shit.
Hey man, you say that LA weather is not is not the problem or is not a good example. I think it is, man. All these players that we have in Galaxy, they come to a nice weather area, and then we go play any Texas team, and they're dying. That's not good.
Yeah.
We need more heat, man. We need that 100-degree heat so these guys can actually like
No,
train
man.
in some nasty weather. Cause
No,
it's not,
no.
it is a problem.
Let me tell you real quick. I'm gonna keep it real short and sweet. I was in North Carolina for like almost 2 weeks, right? The second day I was there, my wife's cousin was like, "Let's go golfing," and boy, my goodness, I was not prepared because I don't mind walking 6, 7 miles, however 18 holes is, right? But it was so hot. It was so hot. It was like 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and by like the ninth hole I was melting. I was dying. I was, in fact, for like the 17th hole and on, I just kind of sat there because I was starting to black out and I didn't pack enough water with me. And god, that's my fault. I mean, I didn't have enough water and I started to black out, and at one point I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, this is where I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die out here. And they're gonna say Edgar, died in North Carolina from heat exhaustion or whatever.
And that's why you don't take water golfing. That's why you take beer.
But man, let me tell you, and that's just me walking around. You can imagine, like, a guy from LA, going out there to try to play a game in the middle of the day with that heat, that humidity. Yeah, hell no, man, not built for that. It takes a while to get used to that.
So this is one of the things why I was so, to a certain extent, I was so happy when all these guys went traveling to Austin. I believe it was last year. Because I'm from Texas. I'm born and raised in Texas, South Texas. So I grew up in thunderstorms. I grew up like in nasty weather when it was nasty weather, right? And nobody here had ever really seen granizo. Like, what is it called in English?
Hail.
Hail? Yeah, nobody really had seen hail. Hail here is the Starbucks ice, right? The Starbucks,
Oh yeah.
the what's it called? Sonic ice that they give you, right? Those little balls of ice that are really nice. Yeah, that's hail here in California. When they went to Texas and they went to Austin and they had that nasty storm, you were getting golf balls, baseball size hail, and people were going insane. People were going crazy that this is not natural. This is crazy weather. I'm like, yeah, that's an actual hurricane speeds weather. That's actual hail, not the weather that we get here in California. I'm like, this is nice for
Yeah,
anybody that's from like the Midwest and anywhere over there, man.
yeah. LA weather, I won't change it. But one thing that stood out to me that you said, Chewy, balls of ice that are really nice. That is all. We're gonna cap that and we'll quote it later. um, you guys are mentioning weathers of different stadiums, different cities, and all this. And I know Edgar, you mentioned this before we even got on. MLS teams are the last four there. There's gonna be an MLS winner. But let's look forward
Yeah.
to next season or the next tournament. What are some of the improvements that Leagues Cup could do to maybe quote unquote even the odds so there's no mad fans from either Liga MX or MLS? What are some
Well,
ideas that you guys could throw
be,
out
be-
there?
well, before that, I just want to ask you guys, all three of you guys, do you guys think that League Cup at this point is a success or a failure? Because obviously last season it was a rolling out of the red carpet for Leo Messi, and lo and behold, they ended up winning. Some games where they won in dubious fashion, right? But they ended up winning. But this year, Messi isn't really there. He's hurt. Inter Miami is already out at this point. So is the tournament a failure? There aren't any Liga MX teams there for in the final four. What do you guys think?
Um, I think it's a success. A success because as an MLS fan, a champion is going to be an MLS team. And that's bottom line. I know like a lot of people didn't really take this tournament serious or whatever it was. But now the last four, they're going to take it serious. That's his final spot. Well, that's not a final spot, but a slot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And that's one of the tournaments that you do want to be in. And so whoever wins from here is going to get a spot from there, whether they win the MLS Cup or not. So that's an important part of the tournament. So I think it's a success for it. Not like a big success, but like, I guess. Big Matt.
I like the change in the format to where more Mexican teams get a hub that I think simplifies things for them logistically and simplifies things for their fans. Certainly, I'd be open to teams having more hubs or even not being seated, but have a place that they like naturally have their base out of. So I think that's been successful. I've been to 3 Leagues Cup home games that the Rapids have had. Excuse me, the games were at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. They were functionally the away team, and you had representation from all 3 fan bases that were in here. It was the Marcelo Balboa Derby with Leon versus Colorado Rapids for the final group stage game. Then you had Juarez here on a Friday, and then you had better attendance, almost 1,200 more for Toluca the following Tuesday on 3-4 days notice. So I think that's been enjoyable from a fan base's standpoint. I don't know if we want to get into this, Ed, specifically. I am hashtag Save the Open Cup. If we're choosing, I would not continue to have this at the expense of actual MLS first teams having the opportunity to be in Open Cup. So I still, I've said this off pod. I haven't said it here, but like the every single post that I've done on the Rapids advancing in Leagues Cup, at some point I've acknowledged like this competition is dumb. It's clearly a cash grab. There are politics behind it that I don't agree with. At what point does this become dumb if the Rapids are actually winning it? If you play a 5-hour game of Family Monopoly and you end up winning, it's not just a dumb board game, right? And so I feel like I can hold the dichotomy in my head of the Rapids succeeding and having joy in that, being able to cover that, finding success in that, but also acknowledging that the foundation of the tournament is absolutely flawed and could be improved, or for me shouldn't precede other stuff going on. But we're seeing League MX clubs and their representatives come out and be grumpy about the officiating, complain about the format. What was it? I think it was Monterrey got grouped, and supposedly like their manager was almost going to get fired. So regardless of whether or not the teams are taking it
He got
seriously or
fired.
prioritizing, he did get fired. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, regardless of whether or not they're taking it seriously or prioritizing it over playing 4 games in the Apertura and then moving back to the Apertura, like clearly what's happening in Leagues Cup has consequences in the same way. I would argue that what MLS teams have done in the Conca Champions historically has had consequences and cause and effect.
Yeah, it another thing about this tournament is that when you compare it to the Open Cup is played over the course of the season, right? So the games are sprinkled here, they're sprinkled there, and it obviously it's up to every individual team to decide how serious they're gonna take the Open Cup. Maybe they have like a really important MLS game that same week, and they're gonna want to put some of their top guys into an Open Cup match, and they end up getting eliminated. And at that point, they're like, whatever, it wasn't our intent. But then you get to the point where there's teams that are actually looking for silverware to add to the trophy case, or they're gonna go for it right from the get-go, and they end up fighting for it all the way through, and then the Open Cup matters. But the thing is that it's spaced out evenly so that you can put whatever resources you have available when you need them. This tournament is so truncated in such a short period of time that it's it's such a crapshoot in some instances, and yeah, because you see that some teams want to take it seriously, and then you see some teams that are like, okay, fine, we were dragged into this, and I guess we're gonna have to play it. And oh shit, look at that, we're in the final four, or we made it this far. Like, who expected Mazatlan to go as far as they did? They're not a good team, right? And so, and then you have like the Rapids, who are a decent team in MLS, who probably did not expect to be where they are now, like you said, but now they're here. So what are you gonna do? Go win the whole
They've won
damn thing.
4 coin flip games against Mexican opposition with increasing quality. Toluca functionally had 5 DPs. Like the Club America, I don't even know how much are they paying Jonathan Dos Santos. They have like, Cole Bassett's great, but like the 4 best players on the field were Club America players, and arguably the Rapids did what they wanted to in order to frustrate the opposition. So
Yeah.
It's fine, man. Jonah's getting more money from OnlyFans than from Liga MX.
Oh man. Well, but real quick, guys, let me just run through some attendance numbers, because whenever you talk about this tournament, yeah, you see some of the photos that have been circulating around social media, and some stadiums are pretty largely empty. You look at the Union game at Subaru Park, largely empty. You look at Seattle, largely empty. Um, but then you see what happened up in Levi Stadium, which was a massively attended game, right? Chivas versus San Jose Earthquakes. Compared to last season. So this year, the average attendance is 17,242, which compared to last year was 17,016, which is kind of interesting. So it's actually up. Oh, I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Last year was 17,242. This year is 17,016. So attendance is down about 200. Too much. But
how
then,
much
like I
of
said,
that, Ed, do we think is because we were talking before we hit record, there's certain MLS fan bases that were choosing to boycott Leagues Cup. Like, where's that differential coming from? Because you think it would be up with America having a hub and then being able to pack out the Diggity. I don't remember, somebody was in Houston as well. I do think there is something to the fact that we haven't had one of the Gigantes, one of the Cuatro Grandes go all the way. There was one Mexican team in a semifinal, I think, last year. So I think that's certainly something. It's the same thing, when if the Toronto Maple Leafs lose in the first round every single year in the playoffs, like how much gets lost out from a revenue potential for the NHL playoffs? How sad were all the NBA executives that the Lakers were one and done instead of making it to the finals last year? So I can understand where I'd want to know where that number's coming from. I don't think it's significant enough to say that there's a difference. I think Mexican teams should have more of a hub as well. I think we should simplify or make it obvious earlier when games are happening and who's playing when, because we were under the impression that right up through the Toluca game that the Rapids were playing on Friday, and they ended up playing on Saturday. And then we thought they were playing on Monday against Toluca, and it ended up being Tuesday. Like, Leagues Cup is very much like doing it live in terms of the schedule in order to optimize the TV revenue. Because let's not get it twisted here. The primary moneymaker and the primary audience that they have for Leagues Cup are Mexican fans buying Apple TV and then watching on Apple TV, not necessarily going to games.
Yeah. But just to cap what I was saying real quick, you could probably say that the attendance numbers this year were slightly padded by the massively attended game up in Levi Stadium, which had more than 50,000 people. I would say like 99% of them were probably Chivas fans in a game against the Earthquakes, which the Earthquakes won, in penalty kicks. Um, and we're compared to last season. Last season, the most attended match was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which was between Cruz Azul and Atlanta United. Cruz Azul fans packed that one. Those are some of the teams, like you said, that they travel well. Cruz Azul, Chivas, Club America. Well, most of them do, right?
Dude,
I don't know
leave
if
the
Massa.
traveling too, man. There's a lot of MLS fans that first were Liga MX fans first because of their families, right? But
Yeah,
you can't really ever or not often go see the team, right? So you don't. So you have your MLS team and you go and you're a fan of your MLS team. But then when you have the opportunity to see America, to see Chivas, to see Cruz Azul, right, to see Pumas, when you have the chance, you'll go watch them
yeah.
and you'll root for them over your MLS team sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes, right? Because you get to see them once, probably twice a year. So, yeah, I feel that a lot of the people that went and a lot of people that are going are the same fans that keep going to the games, just because
Well,
they
well,
get to see their teams now.
well, here in LA, we're very fortunate because we get a lot of Liga MX teams that come up here. I mean, Club America, I think it's the second time in a month that they were playing at the Dig. Um, I think they've been up here for like maybe 3 times this year already because they're always up here. They're a presence, just like Chivas or Guadalajara. But if you look at Liga MX teams going to other markets, and obviously, yeah, they're gonna draw well because how often are you gonna see, like, I don't know, a team like Toluca head up to Charlotte? I don't know. I'm just throwing out there. Cruz Azul played in Charlotte, right? And
Mhm.
I heard that game, had a large number of people there. So in that respect, I guess Leagues Cup can be considered a success because you're drawing all these numbers. But when you start to look at the tournament, in my opinion, you start looking at the tournament as a whole, I feel like I don't know if it's worth that much investment. Um, I think MLS would be better off investing more attention, more of the money. Like I said last week regarding the idea of a second women's league, right? I think more of the attention should be focused on strengthening the existing legacy teams that need that help, teams that maybe aren't doing so well in their markets or that need help finding a stadium or need some kind of boost to make sure that you secure these teams so that they're as successful as, say, a Charlotte FC with their attendance numbers, or like Austin, for example. These are teams that are relatively new and they've done really well in their markets. Well, why can't a team like the Rapids, since we have you on right now, Matt, we've discussed this so many times, right? Why is it that the Rapids don't have such a footprint, in their market where you have like two Liga MX teams play an exhibition match at Mile High and it's just packed, right? Why
Mhm.
can't you get some of those people to come in to watch the Rapids? Because obviously the interest is there for the sport, but a lot of people don't know that the Rapids exist, or if they do, they don't see them enough out there where they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go to the game. Well, at what point does MLS push and push and push to have KSC come in and say, hey, we're gonna put some billboards up around town, or we're gonna do a little bit more to market our team instead of just doing the bare minimum? Because it's not just there. I've seen it in other markets as well. You go and you're like, oh, this is an MLS city. Where the hell is the MLS stuff at the airport? I don't see anything out here, right?
You should ask people in St. Louis what it's like trying to get Stan Kroenke to put effort into an existing
Yes.
market where he has a team. Certainly, there's a few things here, Ed. I will say the club's taken off of what happened last year with the supporters group protest walkout, and they had a massive fan survey and a bunch of focus groups with season ticket holders over the winter. I did an article on this for Burgundy Wave. I'd be happy to send it to anyone who really wants to read more into that. They did a full audit of where they were with the fan base, of how the fan base felt, what they didn't really want to see. Obviously, the Rapids aren't signing a Lionel Messi, a Kylian Mbappe style player. What's something that we could do? They massively upgraded the Scran within the stadium. The food's gotten way better. And as a token of that, there's a new head point person at KSC. So in between Porg Smith, the president of the club, and actually Josh and Stan. And one of the initiatives that he actually put out said, okay, the first week that we launch all of that food, every single season ticket holder gets $20 on their credit for their account to try the new food. So that was a step in the right direction, certainly.
That's one beer at the dig.
They've brought in a number of people and a number of new staff to kind of reach out to the Latinx community in the area. This is something that I've been drumming on as a white guy who does a podcast with another white guy about how the Rapids have failed to tap into the Hispanic market. I see someone in the chat as well, saying it's a tough market. We're a really outdoorsy state. The Denver Broncos take up most of the oxygen in the room. There is a joke amongst Rockies fans anytime any Rocky news happens, to where someone will then respond, "Did you know that it's John Elway's birthday?" Implying that John Elway, former Super Bowl quarterback for the Denver Broncos from the 90s, that his birthday makes more news than anything that the Rockies end up doing. And then on top of that, you've got, it's bad weather to start the season, which often turns people away unless it's a snow game, in which case it's a fun meme on social media. It's type 2 fun as someone who has been to 3 Snow Classicos. And then, you get into late April into June, and then it's the Rapids don't start to take center stage until after the Nuggets and the Avalanche's playoff, whatever that outcome is, has actually happened. And then at that point, it's 4th of July. Then you blink and it's Broncos training camp. The Broncos had their first home preseason game with Bo Nix starting today as well. So it's a crowded sports market. It's a very outdoorsy state that likes to go do other stuff to the west rather than necessarily stay locally. So it's a tough problem statement. It's a tough thing for them to deal with. They've got more marketable stars locally. They've got a fun team that is playing well. They've won back most of the fans who I think they lost last year with everything from the protests and everything. They've made it more of a fun experience. There's still a lot of hard stuff that they've got going on. I joked on the podcast earlier as well that there's still other things from an amenities and a stadium standpoint as well. Dick's is a bare bones stadium. It's that. San Jose. Houston looks like they did something. I don't know if they just changed the color of the seats or whatever, but it's not what other teams have from a new stadium or from a renovated stadium. I thought the Galaxy did a really good job when the Chargers were in town, of basically saying, we're going to have you as a roommate. You're going to sleep on our couch, and also you're going to pay to renovate our kitchen. With what they did, the Diggs hasn't done something like that. And so I made a joke that if some of the money that the Rapids got from Nice for Moist Bombito goes to finally replacing that scoreboard, which is up to 31 broken panels, we'll have a step in the right direction. A downtown stadium isn't coming anytime soon. A new training ground isn't coming anytime soon. Can we make incremental improvements that at least just make the club less of a bad situation? They're doing some of that. It's nice to see more of that. Winning games solves a lot of those problems, or at least makes fans think less about them immediately.
So if I'm sorry, not if, when the Rapids win,
I was
Leagues
going to say
Cup,
that. When they
are
win
we
it.
going to see a big ass parade through downtown Denver from Union Station all the way up the road there, and then circling back down to have a big party right in front of Coors Field with everybody celebrating and drinking out of the Leagues Cup?
I think we just take over. You guys know what? You guys know Fish, the band, right? PH.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, jam band. So the Rapids never play on Labor Day weekend because Fish is there and they do a jam session Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. I don't remember if they do it Monday. It makes KSC a lot of money. It kind of messes with the field, but they mostly dealt with that. I think the Rapids take over Fish Sticks, as far as I'm concerned. That's the name of the concert. It's a fun joke or whatever. But so the bigger thing that I'm wondering, Ed, I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's Georgi Mihailovic. There's Georgi Mihailovic in the Olympics. And then there was actually a bet that if he scored a goal at the Olympics and the U.S. got out of the group, he made a bet with Chris Armas that he would shave his head. And Chris Armas made the joke of, well, you need to look more like your head coach because your head coach is handsome. So Georgi Mihailovic shows up like on 2 days rest. He flies immediately back from Paris. The game against Leon, which the Rapids needed to win, takes place on a Monday. It's at 3 a.m. for his internal clock if we're talking Paris time. He comes in and plays 20 minutes, absolutely bosses it. The Rapids get a goal. He sinks his penalty. And the joke we've been making is, there's the British actor in the movie Glass where he plays like 21 different personalities.
Yeah.
He also plays
Professor Xavier.
Professor X, yeah.
Yes,
I forgot his name.
James McAvoy.
James McAvoy.
So if you look at James McAvoy with the shaved head in the movie Glass as well, they look exactly the same, and he's an absolute psychopath. Georgi Mihailovic he's a fantastic player and a DP when he had his hair. He is El Crack without his hair. So at this point, Ed, I think honestly, like, every single Rapids fan is going to have their head shaved when the Rapids win Rocky Mountain, the League's Cup on Saturday. Like, that is going to be the new haircut. Like we're replacing the Ronaldo like triangle or whatever. Nobody's doing like whatever Messi does or anything. We're done with the bleach tips or whatever. We're all just going to turn into shaved head psychos and just go hard.
Perfect, Coach.
Hey, Edgar. I think you said something very interesting that I think contradicts Leagues Cup, where how you were saying that Mexican teams were filling up the stadium, right? The Colorado Stadium, and that MLS should put the money on teams to grow kind of like the people that go to right for growth for MLS.
Mm-hmm.
So then Leagues Cup is a good thing, right? Because they're kind of showing the people in the cities that, hey, here's your stadium, this is your team, but this is also a Mexican team. But come to the stadium. We have soccer. You can see a team every other weekend or every weekend. Like, it's getting people in seats to show off kind of what your team has.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of insulated though, because if you're talking about just having an exhibition game where two Liga MX teams show up and play in in a massive stadium like Mile High,
But it's
you're
not
not going to see
right. It's
you're
a
not going to see any
tournament.
Rapid stuff anywhere, and unless somebody shows up wearing a Rapids kit to the stadium, and people look, hey, look, mira ese way, con su camisa de Rapids,
Right, but you'll
But
start getting that peak interest of who plays in the stadium.
well,
Right,
the thing,
you'll get
the
people
Rapids
in
don't
there.
play at Mile High; they play at Dick's, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know I don't know. Are we, Matt? Are we ever going to see like a America versus Chivas at Dick's Sporting Goods when they could just have it at Mile High?
No.
The
And I
potential of tickets, yeah.
when they've come here for Gold Cup, El Tri has always played at Mile High. When there's been other friendlies there or other games there, it's usually been national team. Both national teams are really comfortable at Dick's with the setup and the way that it is, and the Rapids roll out the red carpet for them, understandably. And then obviously the Colorado girls, Lindsay Horan, Mallory Swanson, and Sophia Smith actually prefer that with the grass setup. And then I think there was one. I think Brazil played Panama in a friendly before Copa America, but other than that, like, all the other stuff's been at Mile High. Even with just the two like lower bowls or whatever, you've got 50,000, and El Tri fans will sell that out in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
I mean, yeah, that's the thing when having like a larger capacity venue that can take over. I mean, they're gonna go for the money, right? The potential of tickets is too much of a difference.
I hope my son lives to the ripe age where he can travel to El DF and watch a Rocky Mountain Cup between RSL and Colorado at Azteca, and it's packed to the brim with Mexican fans hungry to see some MLS action from the Rocky Mountains. What do you think, Matt? You think we'll ever get to see that?
I'm not sure. I will say I don't think that with what KSC is doing from a land standpoint, I don't know that we see I don't know that we see the Rapids playing at Dick's. I think it would be with the fact that Stan is married to one of the Walton heiresses, as in Walmart, and they're now the majority owners at the Broncos. I think it's before we see a brand new Soccer Pacific Stadium in downtown Denver proper, I think it would be more likely that a retrofitted Mile High 3 then sees the Rapids get conglomerated into that ownership and actually play in a reduced capacity version of Mile High. I think that would happen more likely. That's more likely in the next 10 years than I would say the Rapids tearing down Dixon and then building a new stadium somewhere downtown.
I mean, yeah,
So-
kind of like a SoFi, but with a football team and a football team.
Yeah.
Atlanta without the roof because we want snow.
Real quick, guys. What's your prediction for the match against LAFC? Because obviously they're pretty hard to beat at home. So
Yeah.
what's going on? What's going to happen?
Yeah. All time at the bank, the Colorado Rapids have no wins, no draws, and 6 losses, and they've been outscored on aggregate 17-2. So I'm going to continue. I predicted the Rapids would lose in penalties to Leon. I predicted them to narrowly beat Juarez. I predicted them to lose to Toluca. I predicted them to lose to Club America. I'm going to keep this going, maybe because I'm the jinx, apparently. I'm going to say that the Rapids lose. The scoreline will be competitive. The underlying numbers will it clearly indicate that LAFC is the better team. 2-0.
I agree. Well, let's put a bow on the Leagues Cup, because for most of us that are MLS fans, we are pretty happy with the results. Especially you, Matt. Your team is still in it. Moving on to the next things. There's been some rumors that were happening a month ago and now confirmed. Edgar, what do you have for us with this summer transfer window news?
Damn, it took long enough for us. I mean, we started hearing about Marco Reus like way back in June, right? That's the first time I heard about it. And like it's I mean, I go to the store and they have Halloween stuff up already. I'm like, damn, is it spooky season already? Like literally, I was in North Carolina, right? And like August 1st rolls around and I start seeing all this Halloween decor. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, what's going on? Well, that's how long it's taken for LA Galaxy to finally put pen to paper, for finally to like get all the videos recorded, get all the samba dancers, in place, all the leader holes and everything, so they could finally announce Marco Reus is joining the LA Galaxy and have like 70 billion videos of him from different angles saying, I am ready to play for you, Galaxy, or let's go G's, or whatever the heck they say. But my goodness, and it's at one point I felt like it was kind of anticlimactic that they finally announced him, because you heard so much scuttlebutt for so long, and it went from like, oh wow, he's coming over, to all right, when is he coming? I mean, is he here? Is he not? And it's kind of like that feeling those Galaxy fans had that went to LAX. Man, they went to the LAX, went to the international terminal. They were all there cheering and chanting and waiting for him. And then you find out that he went out through the back door. So those people were just standing there, just waiting.
Speculation, because we're not sure, but speculating that he probably went out the back door.
Yeah.
There can't be that many Lufthansa flights from Dortmund landing in LAX.
There's maybe like theories that he was already here in the US, and so he probably took different flights coming into LA. But those are just rumors.
Yeah, or flying from a different country, right? He was in vacation. We don't know, right? He's not gonna say.
The point is that he's here. And now
where's the corner of the Galaxy was tracking the private jet that was bringing Zlatan for the first El Tráfico? Like, where was that? Okay, do we not care as much about Marco Reus's arrival?
Yeah, but they kind of leaked that one. Galaxy kind of leaked where the hell he was coming from. That was their bad.
Okay. Yeah, and then they had people lining up to cheer for Zlatan as well. There were 10 people show up at a random Tuesday night at LAX of their own accord in order to meet a new Galaxy player and everything. That was an opportunity. That was an opportunity missed marketing wise, and the Galaxy should have done better.
Oh, the middle of the day during work hours? Oh no, it was gonna be hell for everybody.
That's true.
Yeah. But he's finally here, and we hear that his first game is going to be this Saturday this upcoming Saturday against Atlanta United. The team already announced that they're going to be wearing those really sweet retrograde kits. So the first chance you get to see Marco Reus will be wearing one of those OG Galaxy, retro kits. Um, and it was announced also, I think on Friday, or maybe yesterday, he's gonna be wearing number 18. Ending, the speculation about what number he's gonna be wearing. Interestingly enough, number 18 was a number that Greg Vanny wore when he played with the LA Galaxy in that very first season the team existed. So we'll see if he has the same kind of impact he had. Royce has the kind of impact that Vanny did, because that year Vanny scored a do you remember the old MLS penalty kicks? What was it called? I forgot.
Shootouts.
He's was
The
that
40-yard dribble up shootouts.
those things? The shootout. Vanny scored the one that sent LA Galaxy to MLS Cup final that year in '96. So maybe Royce will be that kind of spark that the team needs to finally get over the hump, finally beat LAFC, and finally maybe crawl into MLS Cup and say that this season has been a success. But you know what? LA Galaxy isn't the only team that brought in a European into Greater Los Angeles, because the guy's right up the street. We already knew it. He was coming, and now he's officially here. Olivier Giroud joined LAFC. So, my goodness. In a summer transfer window that was kind of confusing for some teams, a hit or miss for some, both LA teams landed two big names. And I'm wondering, because I know how I feel about it, but I'm wondering from you guys, who you think came out the winner in the Royce versus Giroud, and how it's going to impact their teams.
Oof. I'm gonna be biased on this one, so I'm gonna let Matt take the floor on this one.
There's a part of me that's wondering, LAFC assembling, basically the French national team of guys over the age of 30. Like, does this not have like a Brooklyn Nets vibe to it when it blew up with KD? And, so that's one thought that I have. But like, on the same time, I think Hugo Lloris has figured it out. And while Olivier Giroud statistically might not be an impressive goal scorer compared to other players of his similar ilk, like normally he scores big goals in big games for his team. When he did that when he was at Chelsea, he did that when he was at, I think it was AC Milan, and he's clearly done it for the French national team. I will argue in terms of what was the immediate need and then how much of an upgrade that you had, that what Marco Reus can do, his positional flexibility with Gabriel Peck, with wherever Pencil's playing as well, he can play in a bunch of those different positions. He's filling, I think, a hole that was a little bit more prevalent. I realize I'm about to say that Kai Kamara is almost as good as Olivier Giroud in this one, but you had a serviceable player in that role who is comfortable in it, who is capable of scoring goals, albeit a little bit old. Granted, Olivier Giroud is also as old. I will say that still on LA, before the window started, LAFC was the better team on paper. I think they are just barely the better team on paper. I think the addition of these two acquisitions was the LA Galaxy closing that gap significantly to where I think any El Trafico decisive game in the playoffs would go down to the wire and, be a fantastic game and a very close game between the two best teams in the Western Conference.
Well said. Edgar, I know you asked us about our feelings, and I know your feelings, but what are your actual expectations for a Marco Reus? I know he's not old, right? Not for like the earth, but football wise, he might be getting up there in age, and he has had injury problems. I know he's not going to start here because you have players like Paintsill, you have players like Ricky, you have players like Gabriel Peck, and even Fagundes who could start over him. He's going to be the guy that comes off the bench and changes the game. Is that the expectations you have for Marco Reus?
Well, there's one thing that Matt said that's really important to remember with him, and that's flexibility. Because one of the things that we wanted going into the summer transfer window was for LA Galaxy to find another forward, right? Because when Daniel Valic is hurt, who's going to be scoring goals? It's not going to be Miguel Berry. But some way, somehow, the LA Galaxy has found out ways to score goals without Valic. Even once in a while, Barry will score one, right? Like we saw him do against San Jose in League's Cup. But somebody like a Marco Reus offers you that flexibility where he could start if you need him to, right? If somebody gets hurt or somebody needs a bit of rest, I mean, who's gonna need rest after like this 2 week window, right? But going down the wire, there's gonna be a lot of tense matchups, and if you need him to start, give you like a good solid 60 minutes, step off. Or if you have one of your guys come in and maybe you look down the calendar, you're like, we have another big match coming up. Let's put Royce in there and see what he can do, and that's also fantastic. But I think the most important aspect about having somebody like him is that you have a lot of young, impressionable guys on this team, especially somebody like Ricky Pooch, who's in the middle. You have Marco Reus come in; he has a wealth of experience, and he is a proven leader. And maybe he can either talk to Ricky, in the dressing room, offer some pearls of wisdom, or maybe just through example, show him how a true leader on the field works. Where, yeah, it's okay. You're gifted, Ricky Pooch. You have these wonderful gifts. You're skilled, but there's also a way you can use these gifts in a different manner to make your teammates better. So that way, the focus isn't always on you. You're not getting double teamed, and now you're making sure that the attention is spread out, opens up some holes, and then Galaxy can exploit that. So there's so many different ways to go with it, where I can kind of see where Matt also mentioned about closing that gap, because you think to yourself, my God, Olivier Giroud is this prolific goal scorer. The guy's going to come here. He's going to feast on MLS defenses. Well, LAFC is already sitting on a wealth. They got Kei Kamara, who was a revelation for them, because a lot of people are like, wow, Kamara's old in the tooth, right? What's he going to offer? Well, the guy's scoring goals, right? And Boanga, yeah, he had a rough start, but he turned it around. Um, and so they have a lot of different ways to go. So where are you going to use Giroud, right? I mean, I'm sure Kamara is not going to be happy seeing like, oh my God, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it better than people expected, and here comes Giroud. Um,
Kai
so
Kamara scoring goals and then being reduced to the bench because of a change in the team is not a good thing for your dressing room. Can confirm.
yeah, yep. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's why hey Matt, you're absolutely correct. I feel like, yeah, Galaxy has brought that gap a little closer. Galaxy has had some very tense matchups with LAFC already. None of these games have been blowouts, so I think the next match that's coming up in September is going to be something to really focus on. I think it's going to be one of the more important matches in MLS this season, because you have these two teams that are obviously fighting for that top spot in the West, and LAFC has those games in hand. Well, you know what? You better make sure that those games count for something. So now we're going to see that. That's what I feel. I don't know what Chewy thinks. Chewy, your insight is always important.
I concur.
I love that. I love that. But enough about the West. There's a team in the East who actually picked up a U.S. national team player and a let me check here, because Tim Ream came back, so he's in
Yeah.
Charlotte, and they also picked up, I believe, a forward,
Yeah.
Diogo Gonçalves. So
No,
those
they
are
also picked.
That's RSL.
RSL. Never mind. Wrong one. Well, Tim Ream. Let's start with Tim Ream. Edgar. What do you make of that? Them coming out in the East, picking up a player like that, a veteran
Well,
player at that.
I mean, immediately, I'm a Fulham supporter, long-time Fulham supporter. So to me, Tim Ream is he for a while he's been a pillar of that team and the defense. A lot of people are saying, look at him, they're like, he's an older guy, he's slower, but you know what? He knows what to he knows what to do without expending too much energy, and he gets results. We saw some of that with the U.S. in the World Cup, where people were wondering, how could a guy like Tim Ream go in there and be effective against some speedy attackers? Well, you know what? He went in there, he did work, and I part of me is like, I kind of wish he would have retired with Fulham, but at the same time, I know Fulham cannot hold on to him for too long, because he's getting older, right? It's about time that he moves on, and for him to come to MLS, I'm kind of surprised. I thought maybe he's gonna end up in St. Louis, because that's where he's from, but no, he ended up in Charlotte, and that's fine. Charlotte's not a bad place to play, and I know that the fans are gonna appreciate him, and that Charlotte defense is already pretty solid, and for him to come in there, and it's gonna be kind of like the same with Royce, where he has a lot of experience, a lot of he has a presence to him, and I think that's going to benefit them. It's going to be a tougher place to play when people have to go down there. So that's my first impression. But Charlotte, man, they for a while there, for a few minutes, they were linked to a lot of different people. We were talking about it before we came on. Miguel Almiron was one of them. I know the Atlanta guys from Scarps and Spikes. They were about to like have a conniption because that was their boy, right? And he ended up going to Newcastle, and all of a sudden he might come back to MLS with Charlotte. Oh my goodness, how could you, right? But in the end, um, it seems like Charlotte couldn't give him enough. We heard about the whole thing with Marco Reus, where Marco Reus wanted to come to LA. Charlotte said, "Hey, come over here. We can give you all this," but um, he just wasn't interested. He wanted to come to LA. In the very end, Charlotte ended up with Pep Biel, who came over from Olympiacos. And a lot of their fans are like, really? After all this talk, after all these names that were thrown out there, is this the guy we end up with? Fine.
Dude, if they had
Um,
gotten Miguel Almiron, like
That would have been nice.
like the Eastern Conference would be a four-headed monster because you have both Ohio teams, Miami if Messi's healthy, and then I don't think there's any question that Charlotte got better. Like Charlotte bumped their way. They went from being the top of the second tier to making it a four-team top four tier. I am so grateful that none of our teams have to play in the Eastern Conference.
That's true. But there's a Atlanta picked up a player too from Atalanta to Atlanta. That's
yeah,
kind of funny.
that's funny. From
That's a
Atlanta
big
to
signing.
Atalanta.
Yeah, and well, how we mentioned earlier about Diogo, he's in RSL now. Does that make them way better? Because they were already good from the start of the season. Could this be a signing for them that puts them in that top spot in the West?
I think it's a big move, Bryant. I think it's a move that solves the one issue they had from an attack if we're talking about the front four. Obviously, Chicho Arango, not saying bad words to other opposition, he is an MVP caliber candidate. Diego Luna, absolutely fantastic for them as well. But then, Matt Crooks was fine as the number 10, but that's not, that's a position that you can easily upgrade, or that's a position that when ownership had been talking about wanting to use that other DP slot, willing to splash the cash in this window, they were able to fill. I wonder whether or not it's too many pieces moving in and out because you are adding in a new player with just, 8 games to go, since we're talking about his signing happened after RSL, or he wasn't made available from when the transfer happened to when RSL got eliminated. He hasn't played in a game yet. So he's got 8 games to get sorted and get familiar with being in the United States and the travel and conditioned altitude and all of that stuff. And then also you sold Andres Gomez, which was a fantastic piece of business, just like Moise Bombito. The Rapids selling him record transfer fee for a center back, almost $8 million USD up front, and then a bunch of other stuff as well on top of that. But, you're shifting out, you're removing the second most important attacker that you had, the player who absolutely was the Robin to the Batman that was Chicho Arango, and then bringing in a number 10. Whereas if you had just stood pat, you would have had that same level of chemistry. Pablo Mastroeni is a good coach. I've been saying that since 2016. I think they're capable of figuring it out. I think that is more turmoil than it's more moving variables to where things can go wrong than just Marco Reus integrating within the LA Galaxy attack, or Olivier Giroud literally plug and play for Kai Kamara, doing the exact same stuff that Kai Kamara was doing, but getting familiar with his new teammates. You're taking out your second most important attacking piece and bringing in a new one, and at the same time having a hole in that position. Is that something that Diego Luna can overcome? Is Goncalves secretly just going to show up and be him? I don't have answers to those questions. Pablo Mastroeni needs to come up with answers.
Yeah, 100%.
By the way, RSL wasn't the only team that really upgraded themselves. Minnesota United, they started off really good and they just fell off a cliff. And we talked about that with the Lunacy podcast guys last time we had them on the midweek show. So what did they go and do in the summer transfer? They went out and not about one, but 2 DPs. So they got Kelvin Yeboah and Joaquin Pereira, who came in from Genoa in Italy and from Atletico Tucumán in Argentina, respectively. So they're trying their hardest to say, hey, don't forget about us, man. We had a good start, and yeah, we've had some tough losses and some results that didn't go exactly our way, but we're not going to give up, and they're going to try and tool up as the season comes to an end and make some kind of noise, because they felt they had something there at the beginning of the season. There were some distractions, but I feel like this is what they needed to do to get back into the conversation. But obviously, we're still in that League's Cup break, right? But once we get back to MLS play, we're gonna get to see if that really works out for them. But two DPS in the summer transfer, I mean, that's gonna have some kind of impact, right?
Should. It really should, especially in a team that was struggling with that number 10 spot being empty, right? And also was a
Yeah.
big part of what they did in the offense. And I mean, if that is somebody that they went out to get, um, I like to see them improve. MLS playoffs are the shit. So I like to see great football, and if they could get better and get in there, I'd love to see it.
By the way, we were talking about how some Galaxy fans were waiting for Marco Reus to show up to LAX. Uh, Austin FC went out and got themselves Usman Bugatti and about 3 or 4 dozen Austin FC supporters welcomed him with hot rods and lowriders when he finally showed up. And that is something amazing. What a way to get welcome into the community. Um, say what you will about what how Austin came to be, because obviously, we were all on board with the Save the Crew campaign, but the city of Austin has done a great job of supporting their club in a very organic fashion. Yeah, they've done some funny things, right? From the little bongos that oh my god, I can't think of his name right now.
Matthew,
Those playing before the games, the green light, which is kind of weird, right? But overall, I feel like they've really embraced their club to the point where some of them are still upset that Diego Fagundes came to LA Galaxy. But what a way to welcome your newest player with a nice a vehicle celebration there. I thought maybe we could welcome Roche like that, right? Have a bunch of lowriders on the Fourth Street Bridge. What do you
that would
think?
have been cool. That would have been cool, but it did not happen. But yeah, great transfer window for quite a few teams, and I love it because MLS is coming down to the wire. And since it's coming down to the wire, guys, team predictions. Matt, as our guest, how is Colorado going to end this MLS campaign?
They will make the playoffs. I think they will finish fourth in the Western Conference behind RSL and the two LA teams. I will say that they advance out of, we're pretty sure the format's going to be the same as last year. So the round of three and whatever, if that's the case, I think the Rapids advance one round in the playoffs. And I think after that, it's probably coin flips, because then I think at that point they will likely not have home field advantage, which, as we talked about earlier, will be a big deal for them. And they'll be playing against quality teams where they'll be at a slight talent deficit. But I mean, if you're talking, even if we're talking about the Rapids not winning Leagues Cup this year, if you're talking Rocky Mountain Cup, home playoff game, massive roster overbuild, Chris Armas rebuilding, putting in his system into this team, and then you win the playoffs or you win a playoff game at home and then qualify for Conca Champions. Like, I don't know how that no Rapids fan could see the Rapids lose at the Diggity to LA Galaxy in a conference semifinal or a conference final with everything that's already happened and not feel joy about this season. But who knows? Maybe Saturday was the trigger, because now the Rapids think that they can beat a team that wears gold, blue, and white at the Diggity.
Let's go. Edgar, this is going to be a two-part question. Same
Sir.
question, how you think the LA Galaxy is going to finish, and who do you think is going to be the dark horse in the Western Conference?
Wow, that's a good question. But first, the first one, um, I really wish I could say LA Galaxy is gonna finish out strong and maybe finish the top of the West, but LAFC looks pretty scary there. Like I said, their biggest obstacle is themselves, right? How are they going to use Olivier Giroud? Is there going to be a distraction there where you have somebody like Kai Kamara get upset, right? Because all of a sudden he has to share minutes with somebody when he was doing well already. Um, but I mean, at that point, it's like they got to fumble things really bad in order not to finish them first. But if LA Galaxy can put up a good fight against them in September and maybe even win that game, they have to win one, right? they have to win one. It's going to be at the dig. I mean, I don't think either one of these clubs has swept the other one in a season series since they've both been in existence. Um, well, there was the Chivas USA days, right? But they don't want to talk about that. But as far as LA Galaxy versus LAFC, I think LA Galaxy will, if they can finally beat LAFC, and we can finally admit here on News Across the Galaxy that the Galaxy is back, then they will finish top of the West. But I think it'll just come down to that big game, and if LAFC can do what they have to do in order to finish just above the LA Galaxy, so it could be one of the two LA teams. As far as who the dark horse is going to be, um, man, that's a. I don't want to call the Rapids a dark horse because we've seen them play hard this whole season, but I want to say Seattle. I think that Seattle had a really bad start. They kind of figured things out in the middle, and we've been seeing a resurgence from them. And we saw how they dismantled. LA Galaxy wasn't really too interested in that match, but we saw them dismantle Galaxy in that game. And I feel like Seattle is gonna make a lot of noise as the season comes to an end. So they'll be surprised if these guys are in a battle with one of the LA teams or even Colorado as the season wraps up. So watch out for them. They might be a team that takes out an RSL and not even blink an eye, and then go into the bank and stun LAFC as well. We know that Vanny has his issues with Schmetzer already, so Seattle's primed to do some damage as the season ends. I wouldn't be surprised if they're there fighting to the very end, and that brings me back to the whole question about how I think the LA Galaxy will do down at the end of the stretch. There's so many variables. There's so many moving parts here. It all depends on whether Ricky Puig and Marco Reus can control that midfield, use the tools that they have at their disposal to their best. Because we already see what a healthy Gabriel Peck, a healthy Joseph Pinto can do when they're fed correctly. And if we can get Joveljic on, back in there, and who knows, he might be really excited that Marco Reus is joining the team because now he feels like there's somebody else there who can feed me. It could be a really dangerous team. So maybe I'm going to say El Galaxy is going to be they're fighting semifinal against the Rapids, right? Going 12 rounds in penalty kicks to decide who finally wins.
That'd be tight. Yeah. Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one, Edgar. One, because I feel that's the most likely thing to happen, and two, it's getting very late, and I know we all gotta go to work, so we're gonna try to cut this short as possible. And this is where it ends. So thank you once again, Matt, for joining us on this late night pod. I know I was a little bit tardy. Had to take my niece out. We had a great time. Went to Dave and Buster's. It was awesome. Saw some movies. And but yeah, thank you again, Matt, for coming, joining us, talking some shit, letting us know that the Rapids run MLS right now. I love
We
it.
run Liga MX. We run
There you
Liga
go.
MX.
There you go. And so, if you want to plug your pod and everything, go right ahead.
Yeah, you can check out my written work at burgannywave.com, and you can check out Holding the High Line with Rabbi and Red wherever you get your podcast. We are recording tomorrow at time of recording, so this will drop Tuesday morning. So if you want to prep for that and hear all of our, luscious takes and, discussing how Chris Armas plans to completely dismantle your noisy neighbors to the north, check that out Tuesday morning.
Perfect. Edgar, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Never the X, as Edgar Nags. Also on Instagram. As always, hey, Wu-Tang for life, baby. Let's go.
Chiasso, where can the people find you if you want to be found?
Everybody, you guys can find me as Chavez JA, Chavez Ha on all my social media. It's pretty easy, pretty simple.
We're going to put that on a shirt. Pretty easy, pretty simple.
We will.
You can find me as Bryant Nags on all social media. And of course, follow News Across the Galaxy on all your podcast platforms. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you know when we go live and when we drop a new video. And that does it from all of us here at News Across the Galaxy. Once again, thank you, Matt. And we're going to be out of here. From Edgar, Matt, Chewy, and myself, Brian, we are out of here. And as always, keep on nagging.
Keep on
rapiding.
Up the fucking pids.
There we